Tosho. Hey, Gabby. Okay. Let's fade it over. I hope it's using the right one. It's not. But that's okay. 36 months! Hey, Vital. What size canvas do you work on for drawings? I typically do 30 inches by 30 inches, 300 dpi. I draw really big. I used to go 11 by 17 inches at 300 dpi, but that kind of, I don't know, I guess I outgrew it a little bit. Hey Penguin, hey Sunburns. Oh, I don't use this at all. I'll actually close it. I just... Hope I've been doing well. I have been. Today we got a lot of our like big furniture. We got our couch today, which is pretty crazy. The living room's actually coming together. And yesterday I had to like help clean out and like break down a bunch of boxes and clean out the living room so that we could have that all delivered. So that's why I had to cancel yesterday and move it to today. But we are so close to having a room, a living room, like a legitimate like furniture and stuff. We got a TV console and a pretty nice TV like last week, and then got a couple like peripheral stuff, like a place to put the router with like our little office space. So there's this like two-tiered shelving, standalone shelving unit that we have like our printer on and stuff, so that's finally out of the way. And today we got the couch, and then we also built like this little cubby that's gonna be next to the door so you can like put your shoes in there and like your umbrella or whatever. So it's very exciting. I'm really happy to see it all kind of coming together. And I think the last thing we got, which is coming next week, is going to be like it's gonna be floor lamps that we got for the living room, and coffee table. So that's gonna be coming in next week. And then at some point in the future, I will get a rug. I ordered it, but it hasn't shipped, and I don't think it'll ship soon. So, one of these days, we will have a rug. Hi, thank you, Robin. Yes, I'm very excited. I'm excited to finally like actually have a living space and not just like an in-between where we're constantly inundated with cardboard boxes for like all the new furniture we've been getting and all that kind of stuff. And just in time for me to fly home for the holidays and not get to experience it over my break. So that's really cool and awesome and lovely and sick. I'm not bitter at all that I won't get to actually enjoy my own apartment over Christmas break because I will be gone. When am I flying back to Charlotte? I am doing that, I think on the 23rd. So, like, definitely a couple days before Christmas. I missed some hellos. Cat, hello. Prodigy, hello. Thank you, Robin, if I didn't say that already. Wondering if you still keep a sketchbook? I have not been able to. Not for a couple years. I feel like I really stopped drawing in my sketchbook, like, in 2020. Like, once school was over, and I didn't have, like, a liberal arts class to draw my sketchbook in, I really don't, really, like, have that many excuses to kind of just sit down and draw my sketchbook anymore. Like, I could do it, I should make time to do it, I just haven't. So I would really love to actually get back into it. A thought I had earlier today while I was like sitting on the couch doing some other stuff because I was working. I was like, I could finally like sit somewhere else that's not my desk with my computer and actually like draw on my sketchbook for a little bit. So we'll see if that actually happens. It'll be cool if that does. No promises though. Lo-fi songs always start off so soft. I need you guys to actually provide proper backing music, please. Thank you. Birthday's closer. Study robot anatomy. Where draw person first, structure some parts. I'm not sure if I know what you mean, but mechas are fun. I would love to just kind of sit down and learn how to properly design a mecha. That'll be me of a different life, though, I think. Hi, Beach Parade. Do you have any suggestions for sketchbook pages? I have to fill mine up for this semester. people treat their sketchbooks differently. I really like filling out a page, so it takes me much longer to finish a sketchbook. But like, if you have to finish a sketchbook for a semester, like, don't worry about making each page like a beautiful art piece. I know, like, there used to be a trend, I don't know if it still is, but like CalArt students used to post like their sketchbooks, and they ended up creating this like weird culture where your sketchbook is only like fit for professional, or like even it's your sketchbook has to look like theirs, where it's like really nice studies on each page, or it's like there's colors and there's different textures. It almost looks like they planned it to look like that. I feel like some people, that's just naturally how they make their sketchbook pages, and for some people that's like so not how it looks. And I'd honestly say, like, don't worry about doing that stuff, because when you're trying to fill out a sketchbook, I think the most important part is to not force yourself to have to do more pages. Like, the more you can mitigate how many pages are done just to fill the sketchbook, and how many pages are done because you're actually drawing for yourself or for an assignment or whatever, try to balance that out. Because, like, ideally those assignments are not meant to stress you out. They're supposed to encourage you to draw more frequently and get you in the habit of drawing. Unfortunately, the side effect is that you usually get very tied up about having to finish it. So I recommend not worrying too much about making sure every page looks great, or is, you know, like properly set up, or even like composed. But, you know, things like if you are trying to capture an idea and you can't seem to get it the first try, like, keep trying to draw it. Draw it multiple times if you have to. That usually takes up a bunch of pages, but it's also nice to practice the idea of, like, if you don't get it the first time, you can always just try again. If you don't manage to hit the thing that you wanted to hit, or the look, or the style, or even the execution that you wanted, like, you could easily just try a different method, or even go in with all of that extra knowledge. And sometimes, like, it ends up looking a lot better, you know? But we just tend to not think about um, really giving ourselves another chance at, like, a drawing. Like, as soon as we fail it, we're like, ah, no, it's over. It's over for us. But it's really not true. So, that, and I don't know, like, try to let yourself, like, experiment a little bit. Like, try different mediums. Don't worry if it doesn't look nice, just give it a shot. You might find that it kind of sucks in the beginning, but as you keep drawing and keep trying it, it actually becomes a lot more fun, and you don't feel bad because, again, the sketchbook is meant for you to fill out, so they didn't say anything about each page having to be like a certain, you know, bar of quality. So maybe it's your chance to actually, like, do something new and interesting for yourself. How's my night going? It's been good. I did a bunch of work on that talk I'm gonna give at my old school. Some of you guys might have heard me mention it. I am doing a talk about kind of the job of a character designer in games, as well as kind of portfolio expectations for people who are looking to get a job in the field. You guys were very helpful in kind of helping me decide, like, how I was going to finish it, because originally I just had that section explaining, like, what do I do at work, but not enough. I didn't know how to end it, because a part of me was like, I don't want to give these students, like, you know, career advice if they're in high school, but I feel like they're not going to be interested in me talking about how to design a character, because they all know how to do that. So I don't know, it was a little bit of a toss-up, but you guys helped me kind of figure out a direction for it, and I decided that explaining to them what a professional portfolio looks like might actually be helpful. It might help them learn, like, what skills they need to work on. So that is the next thing that I'm going to cover, and I was working on that all day today. So it's been good. Good morning, CanCat. Hey, Flippin' Wiz. Hey, Solus. Oh my gosh, you should have said something. Well, well, I guess you heard the secret of what I'm working on. But I'm glad that you could tour Riot with On. I didn't know you were taking her class. Yeah, no, that was really yes, thank you. No, that was really fun. I'm so glad that you got to talk to some writers and actually like hang out with them. I felt really bad because like I came and then I just ended up talking with like On and Vincent. So anyone who like reached out to me, I was like, hey, feel free to just like ask me questions if you had any. Because I feel really bad that I went there and I didn't actually like answer things for people if they had questions, but I assume most people were fine just kind of like chilling. So but yeah, I'm glad you got to go. I'm working on a big full body life drawing for class, and I have 2 of them due this Thursday, and I only have the heads done. Oh, I know, I remember that feeling. Godspeed. Godspeed. Hey, K-Mink. Yeah, I heard quite a few people got COVID on campus the past couple of days, so I don't know how that's gonna affect um, that, but I am working on a 30-inch by 30-inch canvas at 300 dpi. What artist are you thinking about in particular? Have I ever heard of that person? I don't think so. Let's see. I guess Instagram would be the most consistently updated. Yeah, so when you try to like analyze someone's work, I think the things you should keep in mind or be on the lookout for is primarily noticing like repeated like patterns of intent, right? What remains a consistent kind of goal that they seem to constantly be trying to reach for. Like, I think part of studying an artist is also to see what they're aspiring to do or have not yet achieved but are kind of working towards, on top of things that they tend to do really frequently, right? So something this person seems to do quite a bit is using that kind of relationship between flat graphic shapes with the kind of natural graphic design of opposing color contrast. So they use a lot of framing in their work to help them distinguish like classic elements. So, you know, instead, let's say if you look at their stuff, if we were to say, like, looking at this piece, which seems to be one of their more proto-bashed pieces, it's not classic, but even in a piece that is partially 3D, partially photo, I think, there still seems to be an interest in merging the two lanes. So it's not even that their art is very Mobius inspired, it's just very graphically distinct. So this idea of like color palettes being a tool for creating compositional relationships between things using abstract graphic shapes. It gets softer in their older work, but you see them working towards that stronger, almost like graphic design versus illustration kind of motif. So that's something that clearly is very important to them, and that translates into how they draw. So characters like this, where what's the video? Characters like this, where it's ultimately the point of this character is not to be visually distinct on its own. It is a prop piece within a greater environment. And so when it comes to designing this character, how they go about drawing this character in particular, it's not important that this character has a ton of details. It's not important that this character is all of that, like, I guess, like, designed in a unique way, but it does stand out because it has that thin but not super weighted, as in like variation in weight. It's not super varied in terms of line quality or in terms of line weight, and it uses big flat graphic shadows as a way to insert this character in a composition that's already pretty graphic. And in pieces that do seem to have a lot of line work, it's not necessarily line work that is incredibly, it doesn't have a range, really, because a lot of the line work is, again, to describe kind of the outer silhouette of things, right? It creates a graphic shape within a graphic silhouette. And that kind of variation in line weight is mainly to distinguish things from each other within that shape. So he has darker gaps in here, kind of the pit shadows, but his actual line work is relatively thin, and again, very not varied in weight, which kind of implies like a sense of like, this is a very utility-based aspect to his work. You see that he does line work sometimes, and sometimes he paints, right? So that's not like the goal of his work is not to always be prioritizing lines over anything else. It's more so to use it as a tool to achieve something bigger, which, based on his work, is very much achieving that graphical composition. Things like this, where he could have easily done a whole environment, but he chose to do this almost like window into a composition. He allows the rocks outside of it to kind of come out and break it, because it creates this really interesting dynamic relationship between these two things. And he only lines this outer layer. He doesn't go too crazy with it. He doesn't use it as its own thing. It doesn't stand alone. It could, but he doesn't in this case, because that's not what he's interested in, right? So that's kind of the stuff that when you try to study an artist, it's good to look at the breadth of their work, all of the things that they've posted if you can, just so that you can see where they've come from and where they're going, and so you can anticipate what they're trying to achieve, because that is often the much more interesting thing, right? But even in their actual published work, you can see things that shift, they leave and they come back, right? He experiments with painting, he experiments with flat styles, but the consistency, the constant elements to his work is almost primarily the use of various props and tools to create graphic, iconic shapes, right? So the idea of just using a flat sphere, the idea of using this window motif, the idea of these lines are only there to give you context. They're never there to be the reason you're looking at a piece. Unlike someone like me, who lines are kind of the primary way that I describe anything. My work tends to just be lines because I find that to be the most interesting. So how I adapt my line work to reflect my understanding of reality, my understanding of anatomy and posing and composition, that's what's unique to my work, versus in this case, Moebius is just an example of an artist that used line work as a way to elevate his stuff. But he was also a comic artist, so there's kind of a bit of a utility thing there. I think the only really Mobius thing about this guy, which is obviously a inspiration, I think is the idea that they both focused on that very graphic read, right? Very helpful for comic artists. But it's knowing and seeing what they return to when they shift away from the normal. He paints, but he always comes back to those same graphic shapes. That's what's important to this artist's style, what it's important to their characters, what's important to their environments. Not so much that they were also inspired by these other artists, right? And then looking towards what they've been doing or trying to do more often, it seems like that framing element is also a big part of what they're interested in. And so that now you have context for like where those decisions are coming from. So hopefully that makes sense. I think the most kind of like, I don't know, just kind of like you have to do kind of a double take sort of a thing that has happened recently is when artists, in an attempt to jump the bandwagon or jump onto the bandwagon of a trend, will gladly feed their own work into a generator, and I'm like, y'all, come on. Like, slow it down. Because yeah, I mean, people are using it for like memes and stuff, and that's whatever. Like, I don't really find them funny, so it's kind of just like, okay, like, you do your thing, whatever. It's just, I don't know. Honestly, I have a bigger beef with artists who, like, either through like vague messaging or in an attempt to kind of both sides the issue, or even an attempt to be very strongly in one camp or the other. Like, there's a weird thing where I feel like certain artists don't understand that what their overall stance on something can also be incredibly detrimental, just by the fact of like they're scaring people. Like, I don't know how many artists, like professional artists, realize that them kind of trying to one up someone who does use this technology can also like make people super afraid for their future or their livelihoods if they haven't joined like professional spheres and understand that, like, for the vast majority of people, like, most artists and art directors are like not very interested in using it because it's really pointless. Most companies are just like, hey, this legality stuff is really strange. We're not going to do it because it could be a huge detriment to our operating costs. We're not even going to try it, right? So it's like, you know, the least you could do is not freak out like students in the course of doing your thing, which whatever you want to do, sure. But I don't know. I kind of just, it's a good time to like have other things going on in my life, if I'm gonna be honest. People keep trying to ask me questions about it, and I'm like, maybe this will be my boomerism, but my decision, my like go-to reaction is just to be like, I've got bigger shit to handle. I've got things in my life that I could be doing. this is just so uninteresting. So thank you. Do you have any tips on drawing embroideries or jewelry on characters' clothes? I mean, I could have I don't know. I don't know what you want to know. Right. I don't know what you're struggling with. Look. I can talk from a perspective of like slightly less fear overall, because there's truly no like utility to be found that isn't surface level when it comes to that relationship, right? Like the relationship between that technology and the work that I do every day is super surface level stuff, and as soon as you ask anything deeper of it, it completely falls apart. That's the benefit of the things that I do at my job specifically. But there are plenty of artists who don't get to have that experience, so it is irresponsible of me to not understand that that is a nuance to the conversation. But I will say that generally a lot of students who are like, am I gonna have a job? You know, am I entering a market that's just not gonna want me? I promise you, intelligent companies, smart business owners, and art directors who just have their head on straight, like, are not going to pass up an artist just to jump onto this technology, because unfortunately it still needs like someone to shepherd it towards like a one desired object, one desired result, and even that is just not enough. Students worry that that's gonna like take over concept or whatever. It's like, it's not going to. You'll have a job. Plenty of these companies that have been established are like not going to suddenly switch their like plan. They're gonna develop an independent group of people that are going to try it, and that's like not your problem, right? So yes, there will still be a job market, there will still be a need for artists, like all of this stuff is not going to happen this fast. But I also can't be here and say like it's never going to affect anything, because obviously it already has. And just like all of the crypto stuff, it's not dead in the water once people stop talking about it. It just is a technology that we have to come to some form of a consensus with at some point. But is it going to destroy your livelihood? No. It will complicate things for some people, in particular certain industries like illustration. But if you're talking about a lot of production artists, there is not a ton of actual legitimate utility for this kind of work, this AI stuff, past a certain point. And companies will always prioritize creatives and employees, essentially, that are multi-dimensional. And unfortunately, this technology is incredibly one-dimensional. So should you keep an eye on it? Yes. Should you be terrified of it? No. Should you be wary of how it's going to develop? Absolutely. And should you attempt to educate the people around you who may be interacting with it in ignorance, or in good faith, right? I think you should. I think the more that people recognize that, like, this is not, like, this can just be something that people do for fun as a tool, and it has consequences. But I'm also of the mind that, like, we shouldn't be actively scaring students to the point where it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? People don't get into art anymore because they're terrified that it's not even, like, a job that they can have. And so then people have to fill in those empty spaces where those students would have been with technology that is not good enough to support the work that they could have done with actual human creatives. In the attempt to warn people about it and to educate people about it, I think it is incredibly short-sighted for professionals to then continue to or to not at the very least turn around and be like, hey, regardless of what's happening, like, this job is really fun. At least for me. Like, it's genuinely the only career I would have ever wanted. It is still the only career that I ever want. It's incredibly fun to be an artist. It is complicated and it's difficult, and not every day is enjoyable, but at the end of the day, I don't want to be doing anything else. And I will never look a student in the eye and tell them that you shouldn't do this, or your job is in peril, or all these things. Like, I don't want people to not choose this profession, because I think it's one of the best, if not the best. And that's obviously a personal bias, but, like, I don't know, I'd love if people got into it, because I think it's really fun and a great way to spend my life. you. I honestly think like that's like the biggest issue, really. I mean, it's a side issue. It's not the biggest issue, and it's not even the main one. But the side effect of a lot of kind of the fear mongering, I feel like, which is not invalid, right? It's a totally reasonable thing to be worried about. But at the same time, like, we just end up pushing away people that would have made this industry better, would have helped it evolve in ways that this technology is kind of preventing us from doing so, right? Like, everyone's focus and fear is about this thing that we're not focusing on the ways that we can help still elevate, like, new ideas, new creatives in the space. And those creatives are discouraged and they leave, and what we're left with, like, a generation too burnt out to keep trying. And then they're, you know, like, I don't know. I think it's just, like, the biggest shame of what's currently happening, where so many people are just like, the message that they're getting is that it's not even worth it. When, like, I couldn't disagree more. I don't think I would literally be here if this wasn't a career that I could do. And the fact that I am doing it is a choice that I will never regret. And I know for a fact that it is still a career that is open and available to prospective new students and prospective professionals. It hasn't gone anywhere. And it is, I think, the biggest shame to see people convince themselves that overnight the possibilities for them have just disappeared. This brush is available on the Clip Studio shop. I mean, their brush engines are very different for sure. So if you feel like Clip Studio offers you that control that Photoshop doesn't, then sure. Spino. How deep did you learn anatomy to apply it to your art? I I learned basically names and functions of most of the surface level muscles. Names and functions of pretty much most of the like important bones within the skeletal structure. And that is basically all the knowledge that I've operated with for my entire career. But I've been doing that like kind of throughout, as opposed to like I learned it all and then I started drawing figures. Like I've been drawing humans my whole life. I didn't start learning anatomy until I was like in my teen years. But I understood like fundamental basic things, like you have 2 arms and, you know, head and ears and whatever. You could operate with that knowledge until a certain point, and then you have to kind of learn like, okay, well, now I should probably learn muscle at some point. And I should learn like how they overlap and how they interact with each other. This D&D art from your campaign? It is not D&D art from the campaign I'm currently running, but I am in the process of writing my own D&D campaign, and this is a character that I was thinking of having as an NPC. Bettered, hey Braku. What helped you get more and more comfortable with drawing from memory? It's something I struggle with. I don't know if it's fear of holding you back. It probably is fear for a certain extent. Like, I think people are generally afraid of not being able to draw something well. Even though that totally makes sense to not be able to draw something well the first time you do it, but regardless, the fear remains. I think it is also a sign that perhaps you don't know something as well as you thought you did, which is not like a bad thing, right? I don't think people realize how difficult it is to really understand how to draw something, even if you're very familiar with it from your day-to-day life, right? Like, because we all know what humans look like. We see them every day. We are one. But to actually draw one fresh from memory, from all the knowledge that you have, is a totally different story, right? So, I'd say give yourself the grace of trying to figure it out. But, I think, start small. A lot of people start the whole process of learning to draw from memory with drawing faces, right? They learn how to draw faces really well to a certain extent, and then they no longer need a guide to draw the face, but they need a guide to draw everything else. Work your way down from that. Start with things that you're comfortable with. Work towards the things that you're not. And you'll find that it ultimately isn't a process that you're unfamiliar with. Generally, people, once they've drawn a type of face enough, will become super accustomed to kind of just defaulting to that. That's why people have same face syndrome. And that is kind of also the basis for drawing from imagination or drawing from memory, is this fact that like you've gotten so used to the same tricks, the same shorthand, the same like indications for like, oh, this is how I draw a nose and this is where I kind of place it, and the muscle memory becomes stronger and stronger, right? And once you get to that point, like you are essentially doing everything that drawing from memory would have asked you to do. Now you just kind of have to work your way towards that goal with everything else. So for me, I could always kind of guess. I'd never get it right totally, but I could always kind of guess like where I'd want to put the arm in this circumstance, right? I kind of understood posing, even though I'd get it wrong sometimes. So like my characters would end up being in these really abstract JoJo-esque poses, but it's like, that's okay, right? There's a time and place for that. And then sometimes they ended up feeling very natural and very normal. So something I did was I would draw with pen on paper. The true nerve-wracking way to get into drawing from imagination is to just draw with pen, and to understand that hey, there is no going back, which is a terrifying thought, but it's also a really great way to kind of force yourself to think more purposefully, with intent, to plan a little bit ahead of what you're drawing. So that you're not totally just putting down lines, you're actually trying to reason out like, okay, what's the next best step from here? And that's essentially all it is just reasoning with yourself based on your knowledge of the object or the thing. What is the next best step to achieve what you want? And that could be anything from realizing that you don't actually have a super solid working understanding of anatomy. You might have relied too much on references to kind of guide you towards like a goal. And you haven't actually understood what all of these lumps and bumps on a human mean, right? You haven't understood that, like, how muscles interweave with each other to create mass, how, posing really works, even though you understand like how the body is structured, and that's all basically coming to the realization of what it is that you haven't truly understood, and now need to develop that kind of more three-dimensional, well-rounded kind of relationship with. So with humans, it was basically that. It was drawing with pen. It was realizing when I would push a line too far, or it was realizing my bad habits, or it was recognizing things that I would tend to kind of misunderstand, and taking a step back and thinking like, okay, so how do I anticipate that next time? How do I kind of build a resilience against that? And once I started really slowing down and thinking about it, then it wasn't even a matter of drawing with pen. It was a matter of like, okay, well, now I kind of have to anticipate muscles before I draw them. I have to anticipate clothing, and I have to anticipate posing, sort of. Like, I have to think about where the legs are way before I get to actually drawing the legs. I have to think about, oh, is the fabric gonna pull over? I have to decide whether or not they're sitting or standing, or if their leg is out way before I get to actually drawing the leg parts. So, again, like, drawing from imagination or drawing from memory, very much a culmination of a lot of different skill sets that you typically don't work on when you're still learning how to draw. So getting more comfortable with it was really honestly just like a brute force kind of method. But it's really about testing your inherent knowledge about something, and taking the leap, even if ultimately you're afraid of not drawing something good. Even though you feel like you understand how to draw these things, you can clearly draw these things when you do it the typical way. But when you actually try to draw it and expand out of your comfort zone a little bit, you realize that, like, it's a very thin kind of support before it breaks. And that's where a lot of that fear comes from. It's that anxiety of coming to terms with the fact that, like, your knowledge and the world that you feel like you've been able to create with your skill set is a lot more thinly constructed and a lot less foundationally concrete than you imagined, and that it's a lot smaller than you thought it was. And accepting that, learning to live with the understanding that your work is not going to look as good as you thought it was for a while, is kind of that first step to breaking out of your comfort zone and really getting into something like drawing from memory. She is a druid of, I think, of the stars? What are they called? Circle of Stars. I think, yes. Because that was the one where they can take on, like, a form, right? Yeah. How do you determine what lighting will cause subsurface scattering or terminal light to appear first before the core shadow? You know what? I don't know. I think people just put it in when they want to. But generally, I think it's when the light is bright enough that there is some semblance of, like, bounce light backing, or light bouncing back into that area, so that's where the Terminator is. Subsurface scattering is more so like if the light is hitting the skin enough, or hitting the skin at a certain angle that, like, you kind of can reason or logic that you'd be able to somewhat see that kind of diffusion with, like, warmer light or whatever under the skin, then, like, yeah, you could just put it in whenever. Honestly, like, I don't think people generally think about it logically. I think they put it in for flavor. At least I, for the most part, don't tend to, like, worry too much about the logistics of lighting. It is one of those things where I'm kind of just flying by the seat of my pants kind of deal, and if it looks good, it looks good. Because subsurface scattering honestly does not appear quite often in, like, just normal lighting scenarios. Terminator is less so. But I don't know. If they look cool, put them in. If they look like too much, take them out. That's all. I feel like, are you new here? I ask only because I draw in a lot of different styles, so it's like preaching to the choir here. I draw in whatever style I feel like on that day. And I don't think it's a weird thing. I think some people just like that. So no. Have you ever tried your hands at frame by frame animation? Do you ever intend to do so in the future? I have. I was not very good at it. I do not enjoy it very much. I would love to do it again. I think if I were one of your players, I would like to romance them if that were an option. I mean, cute. I'm not very good at like romantic plots in like I don't know, even like when I did like do role play back in like DeviantArt days, where they would have like group chats and stuff. I struggled a lot with like the romantic subplots because I for some reason cringe a lot with just the like the whole I don't know romance thing. So like and even in the D&D campaign I'm in right now, my DM kind of gave me the option to like go for a relationship with one of the NPCs, and I was like, she would, but I don't know if I can do it. So like, it's been very like a wishy-washy sort of thing where I'm like, my foot's like half in the door and then half like outside of the door. It also doesn't help that I'm like, I don't know. I'm not very like I always cringe whenever there's romance in a movie. For some reason I really like reading like partially romance webtoons and like manga, but like I don't know. It's weird. things that I like in fiction is not the same thing that I can do when I'm involved in it, you know? So, I don't know how, if like a romantic subplot with like an OC that I have in a campaign that I've written will do much more than just like, or will be much more than just like, oh, haha, that's weird and awkward. Panic. You know? So, yeah. But, I don't know. I mean, most of my characters, pretty much all of my characters are pan-romantic and pansexual. Some are ace. So, like, it's not even a question of, like, that's just not their sexuality. It's more so like, I don't know how to emotionally deal with the fact that this is happening, so I'm just not going to. But I think it is a very flattering thing if they do end up liking her enough that they want to keep her around. But I guess we'll see. I don't really know how the people that might play this campaign will act, so we'll see. This is 30 inches by 30 inches at 300 DPI. Hello? The shortcut is, I think the two brackets. So, these two keys on your keyboard will change it up and down. I have the Tor box, which is this little separate console that allows you to map a bunch of different shortcuts onto dials and buttons. I use the dial on my old Intuos. I used to use the little ring thing that allows you to swipe around. So that's what I'm using whenever I'm changing my brush size. How do you continue to grow and improve at this level of skill? It is a combination of intent, purposeful learning, right? Knowing, like, or understanding that to a certain degree there's like a goal for you in terms of what you'd like to be able to draw, what you'd like to be able to achieve. I knew that I wanted to be able to really draw characters of any body type, race, genre, fashion style. I wanted to be able to draw any character at all that I wanted to draw. That was like my goal. So that meant learning the basic fundamental building blocks for characters, which is anatomy. All the foundations tend to find their way into it as well, like perspective and composition. But anatomy was first, and then developing that into actually getting into character design was kind of a separate part of my life, but that is eventually where I ended up. Recognizing that if I wanted to achieve that goal ultimately, it was going to have to also become a partially about learning fundamentals of design, learning about how costume and fashion and kind of character utility and all of these things, like how they kind of merge together to create like designs that fit an intent or fit purpose. And then it's also time, right? I've had a lot of time to really just re-cement all of those lessons that I have learned over the years and how to relearn. And time is very helpful. So it's kind of those two things, right? It's like understanding that there was an end goal for me, which was to not have any barrier to this higher abstract interest, which was like designing characters. And then having, you know, aesthetic ideals for like artists that I really like, styles that I really liked, types of art and like pieces that I've always found to be really interesting to look at, and figuring out like where do all of these things kind of intersect. So it's really just a matter of like, I say just, but it's a kind of combination of figuring out what my goals are, trying to figure out what is it that I don't currently understand or is stopping me from getting to this point that I am aiming for, and systematically kind of trying to work on all of it at once, a little bit at a time, right? Some months or some years I'm more focused on relearning anatomy, more focused on trying to get my poses to be more casual, a little bit more comfortable, make them feel more dynamic maybe. This year has been a lot of just rehashing lessons about learning about structure, making things feel solid, really thinking through things in a three-dimensional way, right? And that's been the kind of goal for this year for me. So I'm constantly going back and revisiting old things that I used to work on, new things, new problems that I'm trying to solve, also that I can hit this like ultimate goal of not having any barrier to drawing what I want to draw. So it is both a very straightforward and also very overly complicated process. Thank you, Maddie. I'm also very happy that we finished charity commissions. There are times where I'm like super lazy and I don't want to stream, and then I'm like, wait, I get to draw whatever I want to draw on stream. That's great. And I can't work. That's awesome. So I'm definitely a lot more excited to stream now, just to like have an excuse to not work, because as soon as stream ends, I might have to go back to work. Would you have any tips for someone who struggles to draw clothes? Are you struggling to draw like, is it kind of the physics of the fabric? Like, you don't know how to lay them on top of form? Or is it that you don't know, like, how to approach I guess, like, thinking about them in a 3D way? Or is it like, I don't know. There's a lot of different reasons that clothes are difficult. I guess I'm just trying to figure out like what it is. Currently working on commissions, no. Particularly I struggle with draping fabrics and how to depict different thicknesses and or weights with how they sit on the body. When I'm drawing clothes, it feels like I'm just putting random folds for the hell of it. They feel forced and out of place, and I can't seem to communicate what I intend. Okay. So, very helpful that you clarified it, because there are a couple different things that you're talking about here, right? The idea of depicting different thicknesses and weights, and putting random folds in for the hell of it. So actually, now that I think about it, I think these all kind of go back to a couple of things. One, it's a kind of very loose understanding of why folds exist, how they work, and what they're for. What do they indicate? What does adding a wrinkle or folds to the fabric that you're drawing affect the overall read of it, right? What does it say about it? So there's that. There's also potentially a kind of like an aspect to it that's also like, you're not really taking the time to think about these things in a three-dimensional way, right? So not only is the fabric kind of suffering from a lack of like understanding for like why certain folds appear, but also like the idea of draping it on top of a three-dimensional body, having that be reflected in what's being put on top of it, that lack of three-dimensionality, both for the fabric that's draping and the thing being draped upon, is going to, a lack of attention to that is going to make everything else suffer. So ways to approach both. How I've always described fabric is the idea of tension, right? So when someone is holding a piece of fabric, you always want to pay attention to what are points of tension. So the idea that the 2 points that is holding this piece of fabric creates this kind of anchor point for everything else to then kind of cascade in terms of effect, right? You have lines coming down that showcase fabric bunching on the sides, right? This is the movement that you're describing. This kind of bunching motion that is describing this three-dimensional form, right? This is what those two lines represent. This overlapping shape right here is meant to convey the idea that, like, there's this kind of rippling in this fabric that's caused by the displacement of extra fabric, right? It's not gonna drip in a smooth shape because it's not like endlessly expanding like slime maybe. This is a bunch of fabric with no place to go, and its only way to kind of create room for all of these points of tension is to start to ripple and overlap on each other and all these things. So recognizing when that happens, why it happens in actual like reference is going to be what differentiates kind of just blindly putting in folds wherever you want and putting them to very specifically describe what is happening, right? So let's just go on Pinterest and grab like a photo. I will just grab this one. So, oops. It's kind of gross, so I'm gonna cover it up. So looking at this, right? Fabric, jeans in particular, or denim in particular, have a lot of different like types of weaves. So some are more stretchy than others, and some are relatively stiff. This is a slightly, I think, I don't know. I guess I'd say it's like relatively thick. It's kind of crunchy, right? And so you'll see that like there are definitely areas of super smooth surfaces, right? This is where everything is at its most tensed. This is the fabric stretching over the form that is creating the most amount of tension. Everything else is cascading off of this effect. So these folds are cascading off and then trailing into these like peaks because as the leg kind of stretches outward, it pulls a bunch of that extra fabric, because this is a loose fit, right? It stretches and pulls a bunch of that fabric forward, and so you get these like hills essentially that direct you to like the area that is the most tense and the most flat, which is right here. This is where this really interesting fold is happening because it's like basically taking fabric from behind the leg and pulling it forward. But not only that, you have these lines here which indicate a scrunching of the fabric because it's right behind the knee is being bent, so you have all this fabric scrunching up. But the way that it folds tells you a lot about the make of the fabric itself, right? This is a kind of thicker, I think stiffer fabric. Let's see if I can find one that is less so. I have an entire Pinterest board dedicated to this stuff, and I will hydrate as well. But really, the only way to learn this stuff is to actually just go look at reference, start to be able to kind of identify different types of fabric, and kind of what are the similarities, what are the cause and effect, kind of like reasons for why certain wrinkles appear and sometimes they don't. So this is a pretty good example of very loose fabric. Not super thin, but it is loose, right? And so, again, this arm underneath is the primary source of tension. Everything else is falling off of this arm. Instances where you have like these peaks, basically, like volcanoes, is when the ripple that would have originally happened, like say here, in these places, has to fold in on itself. And so those types of folds happen pretty regularly on more draped fabric. These kinds of like ripples that have to kind of bend into and fold on top of each other. And you'll see that there's a lot more ripples in general around these like points of overlap, points of like compression. And so you can always find like this is an area where the fabric is getting pulled into it. This is a seam, right? So you can see fabric kind of radiating off from this point. This is another kind of point where, you know, all the fabric is kind of like concentrating into that tension area. So it's really about identifying these markers, identifying how they're different in different types of fabrics, right? Thickness of the weave, how it's constructed, right? Also how clothing is cut and pattern and fit will change these things as well. How it's being draped, how much excess fabric was put in there. All those things will have a cascading effect on what types of folds make it into, or make it onto the surface, right? As well as how well it translates the surface underneath it. And that really comes from just like identifying these markers, understanding that like, okay, in thin fabrics, this is what happens more often, and in thicker fabrics, this is what happens maybe more commonly or maybe less commonly, right? Knowing that putting in more folds makes the fabric seem thinner, more reactive, as well as, you know, just recognizing that the cut and the shape of a piece of clothing will also change how all of these kind of end up. But you have very common areas where wrinkles will appear, namely in like points of kind of compression. So in the like inner elbow area, in like behind the knee, right? In the shoulder or in the armpits, right? That also happens quite a bit. The opposite happens around areas that tend to create tension, like shoulders, arms, the length of like the top length of the leg, the chest. All those things tend to round out or smooth out areas, while the inner elbows, the armpits, like those tend to compress and create most of those like radiating tension, radiating ripples, and all that kind of stuff. So it's recognizing that these are common markers that describe certain types of fabric. It's recognizing the impact that thickness has on what types of wrinkles appear. It's recognizing how to demonstrate thicknesses through the number of wrinkles, through how you draw these lines, and using all of those context clues to then go back and use that knowledge and use that as a tool for you to describe cloth in an accurate way, right? It takes a while because you generally don't have to know this stuff until you've developed like an actual interest in it. So honestly, I'd say like take the time to really study your reference, get references for fabrics when you don't know what to do, and they will tell you a lot more than you just kind of guessing straight up about what it might look like. Are there any aspects you deliberately change when drawing male characters? You have plenty of pretty women on your Insta and not many guys. I don't really think there's things I deliberately change when drawing male characters. I just don't like drawing guys nearly as much as I like drawing girls. And that's just kind of a fact. But I draw a lot of guys at work, so, you know, it's kind of like it evens out. But girls are just cute, and I like drawing girls more than guys. I was wondering about your line weight. Like, when do you know when to make the line thicker or thin, or when to connect the lines? Just depends on, like, my taste. Like, if I think, oh, that line should be thicker, I make it thicker. It's just, like, gut feeling, right? Like, I'm not following any specific rules beyond, like, if it feels like something that would be in shadow, I might be more inclined to make the line thicker. So, like, underneath the chest, or in areas where there are like pitch shadows, I might make those lines thicker. And lines that are kind of describing something in light, like top of the head, or maybe, you know, stuff like the shoulders or the ears, things that are less important to look at, things that are more important to look at, things that are going in the foreground versus in the background. Like, I might change my line width for that, but then I'll totally break the rule and I'll just go like, oh, this part of the arm's gonna be light, even though according to my rule about the things being in shadow having thicker lines, like this technically should be thicker and this should be thinner. But I don't know, I don't care. It looks fine, I don't mind. When do the lines break? That's usually just when my confidence about placing that line stops. It's not really a conscious choice. It's a byproduct of me not having full confidence in carrying that line all the way through. So I'm not purposely breaking these lines up for like shits and giggles. This is just a consequence of me. So what does LH/LH stand for? Because I know people say /GEN for genuine, and then /J for joke, but what does LH stand for? Lighthearted. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I just like drawing girls. I get called out about it at work sometimes, and I'm like, all right, look, it's not my fault that girls are so pretty, okay? And they're fun to draw, so. But we'll see. We'll see. Do I post past streams anywhere? It'd be nice to be able to go back and listen to tips like this. Well, all the streams are saved. They're saved as highlights. So you can definitely check them. I don't delete the VODs myself. But But we are also going to launch a YouTube channel with all of the VODs for the stream. My mod Tojo has been very, very diligent and kind, and he has tried to save as many of them as possible. So we are planning on uploading them to a YouTube channel where you can just kind of watch them wherever, whenever you want. We're still setting it up right now, but it will be ready hopefully in the coming year. So if you want to just use them as background noise, they'll be there. But yeah, it's kind of the goal. Recently missed many of your streams because of my exams. If I was able to catch up, finally able to catch your live stream. My question is, what is your take on it aired? I don't think it's very interesting. I don't think it's very useful, and I am ultimately not interested in engaging with it, or anyone who likes it. So. I'm also not afraid of it taking my job. Yeah, I think so. Top 3 favorite artists? No. I guess if you just asked me like who my most influential artists are, it'd probably be Gustav Klimt, Alphonse Mucha, J.C. Leyendecker. Do you feel there is an unconventional area of stylization artists overlook when trying to create their own? I guess it's probably like because like look, stylized art to a lot of people is incredibly nuanced and isn't very different from each other. For the vast majority of people and artists, when they talk about stylized art, they essentially talk about the weird intersection where like realism to abstraction merges to where it's kind of acceptable to be anywhere between like art's Instagram girl painting Procreate thing to like anime Twitter to like comic artist to ArtStation person, right? Like there's kind of a common like there's like a little pool where everyone kind of sits in. That's kind of stylized art as like a super murky collection of things. If we really try to talk about stylization in a more like legitimate way, when it comes to actually the whole breadth of it, right? Not just like the little spectrum that most people live in. It's really about like taking that realism, that form, that translation of reality, and breaking it until it's kind of almost unrecognizable is like really not something a lot of people do because it's not something that's very marketable, right? I don't do that because I like drawing characters that are very recognizably literal, but not a lot of people stylize things that we take for literal as like a literal thing, like a character, and break it until it's almost in itself a graphic art form. Like there's one guy on ArtStation, I forget what he's called. I never remember people's names. And if ArtStation's gonna make me do two I wish it did. I'm gonna cry. But he does like this weird kind of stylization that's like really funky. I wonder if he's posted recently that I can find him in or maybe he's not going to, and I'm just gonna have to go look in ArtStation to find, did I save any of his stuff? I should have. Oh yeah, this guy. So there's like people like this where, oops, my mouse is in a weird position. So like this is a place most stylized artists do not go, which is take style, take realism, and fracture it until it's almost unrecognizable, right? People don't do this because it's hard to market this stuff. It's not very, you know, beginner friendly. But this is just not something people tend to do. And this is actually like what stylization is like this kind of interpretation of reality, and no one goes as far as people like this person does. And among there's quite a few people that do this, but you know, that's just not something people tend to do, and so it's interesting. It's fun when you see it. I'm not gonna click the notification. I'm going to let that notification bar rise until I hit the limit for what ArtStation as a website will allow me to have. Little personal, but at this point in your art career, is there anything fundamentally that you're still not comfortable to play around with? I am not very comfortable with anything that's not human. And that's not very good. Still not super comfortable with props. Still not super comfortable. Honestly, like, I struggle a lot with doing, like, motion studies, too. I'm not very good at motion studies. It's not come easy. It's very difficult. And having to do that for work has been really interesting. What mic do I use for these streams? I use an Audio-Technica or AT2020. It is a USB mic. Any Clip Studio paint brushes you recommend? I swear by I'm trying so hard to find some good sketching line art brushes to no avail. Six Pencil Soft is pretty good. Sucreme pencil is also pretty good. All these are free, by the way. This one is also pretty good. I don't use it very often, but it's pretty nice. Sometimes it's an acquired taste. This one's also pretty nice sometimes, but again, acquired taste. I don't really know how to describe these. But yeah, so like these four are pretty cool. I download like this G Pen alternative is pretty cool. A lot of these are just like on the popular page. G Pen one's pretty cool. I download a bunch, but I usually just use that one. Or like the real G Pen is what I tend to use. I use a lot of the default ones because I don't like using Clip Studio very often. So I always every time I use it, I always use like the same 2 or 3 brushes. And then I immediately go back to Photoshop afterward. Turn off. Where is that? What brush size do you draw or sketch in? Well, I draw really big, so this is a size 80 brush. But, I don't know, I change my brush size pretty frequently, so I don't know if it matters. easier slash less competitive to start out as a storyboard artist or a concept biz dev artist right out of school? I don't know if I'm the right person to ask because I don't do storyboard or viz dev. I don't know, I feel like there's always like a good amount of people going into each field, but you gotta remember that like there's partially competition, but it's also like predominantly a matter of trying to keep in touch with like the evolving expectations for what the kind of skills that you need for that specific job. So like even though there are less, maybe I don't know, maybe because there's so many people going into it, but that doesn't necessarily mean most of them are actually like actively trying to apply for places, and if they do, they might be operating on like old knowledge. So it's hard to say if just because less people are going into a field that there's less competition, because I don't really think it translates. Also, concept and biz dev are two different things. Some people like to conflate them, but they are not the same thing. Oh, flower today. Guess I didn't. Did I start out as a freelance artist? If not, what was your first studio job? I did not start working in studios up until like 2020. But before then, I was working as a freelance illustrator. So I did splash art and stuff like that. Another one of your D&D characters? It's not my character, but it is certainly a D&D character that I am designing. She might appear as an NPC in a campaign that I am currently trying to write. She is a fawn. Any suggestions on how to gain contracts as a freelance artist? I honestly got most of my contracts mainly through so there's some where you can apply to them, right? You can apply to be on a Rolodex of artists. I know some people will try to get their stuff into like publications like Spectrum and stuff, because that's like advertisement basically. I got most of my work from basically in between doing bigger freelance jobs. I would do like just commissions, for like the casual commissions, but then I'd make sure to be constantly updating all of my different like social media sites with like new pieces that kind of went into different genres, because I was pretty down to get any kind of work. So I would do stuff that were like fantasy based, or I would try to do one that was much more of like a story illustration versus like a splash. And I would use different styles, different rendering things. I would try to like really flesh out my kind of repertoire of pieces. And typically I would get work just like by people sending me queries on like ArtStation or in my email, or on LinkedIn. But most of my, I think, jobs came from people that saw my work on like Instagram and stuff. I did join a couple of those like ones where they like the book illustration's pretty popular, or a pretty popular like gig for illustrators. So I did join a couple of those like kind of collectives, but they're kind of hit or miss, I feel like, with contracts. I'd say your best bet is probably to see if there are any like applications open for those more like the ones that ask for you to sign up and you'll join sort of like their list of potential illustrators, like Magic the Gathering, there's a lot of publishers that do that as well. But then, honestly, like, a lot of my jobs just kind of came from maintaining a social media presence and branching out into different genres of works that people would hire me for things like visual novels or album covers or merch or helping them put together like kind of an investor portfolio for their project that they were pitching elsewhere. I just kind of rolled with whatever type of job I got. But they were honestly like, there's a reason why I switched from doing freelance to actually like working in a studio. It's because that stuff is pretty difficult to maintain, at least in my experience, and I didn't think I had kind of the energy to deal with it, so I went the way of the industry corporate artist kind of thing. I think with, I don't know, Class 1 has been doing their own thing when it comes to like subscription models and stuff. I don't particularly understand how they've been structuring that. And I don't know. I really don't really I don't get a ton of visibility in terms of like how the student experiences with that. So I guess unless you subscribe to their platform, because they're really streamlining it now, I don't think you can regain access. So yeah. I will say that my intention with my Class 101 course after my contract with them has run out, which will be in February of 2024. I do intend, if you had purchased my class at any point since it's been on the Class 101 site, to provide it for free forever if you've ever purchased it at least once. So if you would like, if you can wait, I would recommend waiting. That's at least my intention. Once I regain creative control over how that course is distributed, my plan is to provide it for free for anyone who's purchased it, so that they can download those videos and have it with them. But currently I don't have any access, or at least any control over the contents of the course. So I cannot do anything about it for now. The plan is also for people to be able to purchase it if you haven't yet. Except the difference will be I don't have to split the price of that class with anyone else. So if you haven't purchased it but would eventually like to, I'd say potentially wait until I've been able to redistribute it myself. Just because I'm not totally sure if in the time it would take you to complete the class with the new subscription model, I'm not 100% sure how that pans out from the student perspective, but feel free to make your own choices in terms of that. Do I have a Patreon? I do not. I don't really have time to take care of a Patreon. But if I ever launch a project, maybe I'll start a Patreon. That'd be cool. Will I post this piece I'm working on in Discord at all? I don't really plan to, at the very least. Have there been times when you've totally lost motivation to draw, no matter how much you tried, nothing turned out well? If yes, how did you get out of feeling that way? Yeah, absolutely. My go-to whenever that happens is to distance myself from art as much as possible. Take a real break from it. I usually find that once I have taken enough of like a breather from it, the next time I see art from artists that I really like, or you know, get a sense of FOMO from seeing people make like really cool stuff and they're posting it, I tend to find myself remotivated to get back into it. It's really about giving yourself time to miss it again. And I find that taking breaks when I hit that point to be pretty much the only way I kind of get myself out of it. If I keep trying to brute force my enthusiasm for it, it usually does not end up turning out very well. When drawing, do you often think about design fundamentals or stuff like the Fibonacci sequence, rule of thirds? I've never thought about the Fibonacci sequence. I don't know what people are on. Oh my god, golden rule? I cannot do that math in my head. Are you kidding me? I always feel like it's such a fraud when people are like, great art is always made and the Fibonacci sequence can always like be put on top of it. It's like, okay, that's wild coincidence. That's cool. I've never met someone who actually takes that into account. Like, that is wild. So no. Rule of thirds, yes, though. That's like an actual legitimate, like, easy to apply, easy to remember kind of thing. And so yes, I do use rule of thirds, but more so with environments rather than characters, and I draw characters most of the time, so I don't get to use it very often. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I feel like the design fundamentals design fundamentals I actually use are like big, medium, and small shapes, and kind of more abstract ones where it's just kind of my preferred like approach to balancing out sharp angles, soft angles, curves, proportions, like stuff like that. I have very specific tastes with what looks good, and I will operate on those tastes. But that's not like an actual core design fundamental. That's just like I've developed an idea for what like how I would like to approach drawing certain curvatures, certain angles, and making sure that the choices I'm making fit that philosophy, just because I like how it looks, and I think it makes it really successful when it comes to imbuing like movement and a sense of like rhythm. So random things like that, but nothing like Fibonacci. It's a wild thing that I feel like non-creatives will market to people. Do you think there's any use for working at 300 DPI? Yeah, like all the time. I work at 300 DPI exclusively. I never work below that, because 300 DPI is the size that you work at if you want to print something. And I just operate under the assumption that my work might always be something I want to print someday. So I will always use 300 DPI as my baseline for everything. I don't go above that though. I don't go into like 600 because that just kind of gets a little bit too much. what color dress I should give her. Her theme is stars, yes. Oh, it is. Didn't notice. Okay, let's see. What day is it today? So, next week, let me check the calendar real quick. Yeah, so next week I will not be here on Friday because I will be on a trip, on a work trip. So I will not be here next Friday, but I might make it up by streaming again, maybe on Sunday. It's on the 11th. But, yeah, so next week I won't be here on Friday, unfortunately, because I won't be at a desk. But, hopefully I'll get to shift that around because I don't want to miss another week. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Can you stabilize like that in Photoshop? Photoshop does have a stabilizer, I believe. Yeah, so you can probably do the same thing. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everyone for hanging out. Thanks for coming by again since it took a bit of a breather on Friday to get some stuff done. So thank you for coming by, even though it wasn't on the normal day. Hopefully I will be able to stream again next Sunday, so on the 11th maybe, since I'll be missing Friday. But thank you all so much. You all are so kind and so lovely. I always love hanging out with you. Have a lovely, lovely week. We're almost at the end of the year, so stay healthy. I hope you guys all have a peaceful week, and let's catch up again on Sunday, hopefully. But I'll let you all know. Thank you, and I will see you all later.